Well, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Welcome to Parenting the Toxic Player. I will be your host. My name is Dr. Sean Cashman. I'm a professor of communication at Pfeiffer University. It's a small liberal arts university in North Carolina. My background and expertise is actually in communication and media studies, but I love all things gaming and geeky, and I've been a parent for over 20 years. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Sarah Cashman. I'm his wife. I am a professional communicator. I work in emergency dispatch. I have a history degree, a master's degree in studying people in crisis in the past, and now I apply that in real life. I have also been a parent for more than 20 years. We have 4 kids ranging in ages from 9 to 21. We have actually played D&D with all of them. That is an interesting experience. So the focus of this panel is, it started actually as a joke, talking about how toxic players were kind of like toddlers, and then we looked into it, and there's actually some correlations, and there's actually, I think, going to be some good advice from this panel, because we went and looked at what the American Academy of Pediatrics said about psychology and dealing with toddlers, and it can actually apply.
Or at least we think it can. We've not actually done the research yet.
Done some,
but it seems logical, honestly. And so even though this is going to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I think there might be some things that you can draw from it here. Now, when we talk about parenting the toxic player, we're going to be talking primarily in the gaming environment in which you're in a role-playing environment.
Yeah, tabletop role-playing.
Tabletop role-playing, or when you're face-to-face with the other person. Because parenting kind of implies that you have a little bit of power and you have some influence over that person, which is not something you're probably going to have with your Overwatch, friend. But you never know.
Yeah, or your raid group in Final Fantasy or WoW or other choice of MMO. That's more of an equal playing field relationship. But when you're talking about tabletop role playing, you usually have a game master, a dungeon master, somebody who has a authority position that is directing and narrating the game. This kind of creates that, where we're kind of drawing that parent-child relationship from. So to start with, we are going to define toxic player.
Yeah, we're going to tell you what toxic player is, and then we're going to talk about different types of toxic players, and then we're going to give you 14 recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics on how to deal with troublesome toddlers. And we're going to see how well they fit in terms of applying them to toxic players. So what is a toxic player? Well, the definition that I found repeated in a number of different sources is that a toxic player essentially is a player who ruins the fun for other players, either by annoying or upsetting them. And that's a pretty broad definition. We tend to think in our minds of toxic player as like that 10-year-old on Fortnite cussing at everyone, using language that would make South Park cringe, right? But it's actually a pretty broad term. All of us could be toxic players given the right situation and the right player, the other players that were around, depending on the mood, depending on the context. So it's pretty broad.
So let's list some.
But here, I'm going to list 7 behaviors often associated with toxic players. Okay? So here they are. First, we have emotionally impulsive. They rage quit. They get offended easily. They react in anger. They are verbally aggressive. They insult. They're crude. They're demeaning. They have a bad attitude. They harm the game, right? For themselves, usually, at the hurt of other members of the group. They're very self-absorbed. They tend to sabotage things or steal things. Those are labeled as toxic behaviors. They tend to harm others. They tend to whine.
They complain
a lot.
About
this
everything.
Game. I hate you people.
Why are you even playing then?
They tend to be socially offensive. They're crude. They're rude. They resort to,
They're socially unacceptable.
Yeah. There's a lot that falls into that category. And so then I took a look and I saw what are some troublesome behaviors in toddlers, according to the American Psychological Associations. And they tend to be emotionally impulsive. They have temper tantrums, verbally aggressive, They scream and demand.
Yeah, no.
No. Bad attitude. They tend to be self-absorbed. Piaget argues that they tend to be egocentric.
That's developmentally where they are at, so it makes sense. It's not necessarily bad for them, but
they'll bite, they'll kick, they'll scream, they whine, and they tend to be socially offensive because they haven't quite learned the nuances of social behavior, and that's not the appropriate time to do that.
So clearly there are some similarities here, and we noticed that when we started looking at this, which we found really funny or really sad.
And seriously though, I mean, we can all act this way sometimes ourselves. We had a bad day, you know, or hangry. What?
That was my part.
I'm sorry. So how do we deal with this behavior?
Yeah, so we're going to start by looking at different player types before we dive into our specific recommendations that we pulled from the American Academy of Pediatrics, because really all of us can end up in that toxic space, not even intentionally. It's just sometimes our play styles are going to be abrasive to other people. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. Because again, toxic play was a really broad category, and I think it's fair to assume that it's not just that one player type. So to start with, we have our power gamer. This is our min-maxer.
Oh, first off, these come from Robin Laws.
Yes.
Okay, so these are the 7 player types by Robin Laws from his book, Robin Laws of Good Gaming. Okay, so we got our power gamer.
Yep. We have Thanos here. They're the ones that like to make the big, tough, powerful character, has the best of everything. Their goals tend to be getting the best item, to be the most powerful. They know the rules well. Sometimes this is actually helpful and good because they can help other players because they know the game well. They like to find interesting supplements. This can be good. This can actually expand your game, make it more interesting. Then they can help other players develop their characters because, I mean, they naturally can lend themselves to being a mentor role because they know so much about the game. So this is not always a bad thing. It can be toxic. They can become rule mongering. They can cheat. Or stretch the rules and like provide this really convoluted explanation where you're like, are you sure you did the math right on that?
Yes, I rolled a 20. Well, let me see.
Oh, it's already moved.
It's already moved.
They can also overshadow or overpower other players. And they can sometimes be inconsistent in character, which can annoy your role players or people who are trying to create this coherent story if they want them to have a consistent character type. They really just want to do the most powerful thing at the moment.
Yeah, I get a +2 to dexterity. Of course I'll wear my underwear on the outside of my Our second type is the butt kicker. Okay? The butt kicker is here to chew gum and kick butts, and they're out of gum. Right? This kind of player is the kind of player that looks for combat-oriented characters and classes, and they love rolling dice, and they love clobbering foes. They may be min-maxers as well, but their goal isn't to get the biggest and best. Their goal is just to hit things, right? They love to fight. That's their big thing. Now, that can be healthy because, you know, a lot of games involve combat. So that's wonderful. They can be very supportive in terms of the team, and this is a great class. This is a great thing for somebody who doesn't really want to work too hard on their background, and they can fit into most any campaign. So they're pretty flexible. So that's pretty cool. However, they can be very toxic too. They can become murder hobos. Right? They'll kill the NPC or pick fight with combatants. They will ignore or destroy the role-playing situations and puzzles. I'm bored, I kill it. Wait, what? And they can derail your campaign sometimes. I'm not interested in your story. I just want to destroy. Our third type.
All right, so the third type Robin Laws gave was the tactician character or player. This is the player that likes to think their way through the puzzles. They like to not necessarily optimize the character, but optimize the situation. So like your character would be best to do this in this situation. So they want to optimize how each character responds to it to do what's tactically the best thing. They like to solve problems. They love mental challenges. They love your puzzles. So they can be really fun people to play with. They also like to come with really cool ways to maybe persuade your NPCs to do something different. They'll think outside the box. It's really cool. They can be toxic. They can tell your other players what to do. They get upset if that other player isn't listening to them and is doing something that is suboptimal.
Yeah. I'll admit this is my class. This is what I like to play.
Do some metagaming there on the situation. They do things their character wouldn't really understand because it actually fits the situation better. Yeah, he does that. He runs a lot of our games. He's our dungeon master for many things, and he loves puzzles. We don't all love puzzles.
But they don't mind it so much when I give them recommendations in D&D, but when we're playing other board games.
Yeah, this is where it comes out more toxic. So like when we play Pandemic, it's a cooperative group game. He likes to sometimes tell other people how they should run their turns. And he's really just trying to win the game for everyone. It's not like he's trying to be mean, I don't think. But in D&D, a lot of our players we don't have any other tacticians in our group, so they're happy to let him come up with, when he's the player, he can come up with a fun plan. In fact, some of those plans they still talk about. There's an incident with a barbecue pig. That is one of their favorite stories to tell. It's this really elaborate plan he came up with, and they're happy with it. So sometimes it's actually a healthy thing, sometimes it's toxic.
Yep. Then we have the specialist. Okay, the specialist likes to play the same character over and over and over and over again. Doesn't matter the campaign, doesn't matter the setting. I want to be Spider-Man. Or a Jedi, or whatever it happens to be. It doesn't matter if it makes sense for the plot, doesn't matter if it makes sense for the world, that's what they like to play. They aren't interested in experimenting, they like it when the rules support their preferred character type. And this can be a fun person to play with because they're consistent, they do enjoy role-playing, even if it is, I'm always the Jedi, right? And they can be very supportive to other players, right? However, they can also be kind of toxic. They can be unbending. Their preferred class, if it doesn't fit the campaign rules, they're going to pitch a fit. They're going to throw a temper tantrum. They may force their character's preferences on other players. You must treat me as if I am a Jedi, right? And they're the kind that are most likely to cause the temper tantrums because they're upset with not being able to play their favorite character.
All right, so now we're going to get into the method actor. This is your hardcore role player. They have a complicated backstory that they refer back to for everything and a justification for why they do things. They're great. I mean, this can be great fun. They have fun with verbal interactions. You can have some really cool role-playing encounters. They like to develop good drama, especially around their characters. This is the one character where they could say, that's what my character would do, and it's actually well thought out and fits the game. So it's not always bad. The toxic side of it is they can do, that's what my character would do to justify bad teamwork. Maybe it is actually accurate, but it's really messing with the game and fun for everyone else. Because sometimes what their character would do is not good for the overall game. They can be a attention hog, especially in role-playing encounters. And they can also use role-playing to act out personal fantasies. That can get creepy.
Very much so. All right, our next type is the storyteller. The storyteller's kind of like the method actor. They're really interested in the story of the game, the role-playing of the game. They love role-playing, but they're really, unlike the character actor or the method actor who's all about their character, the storyteller's more interested in the narrative flow of the game. So they do things for good drama.
At the opportune moment.
At the opportune moment, right? So they love to tell a good story. That's their goal, and that's what they really much enjoy. And they're great in terms of really getting engaged with a well-developed world, developing their characters. They're good at support. They're the kind of player who they don't mind if their character dies, if it does so dramatically.
Or makes the story better.
Yeah, they're okay with that. They're like, okay, that was a noble death. I'm happy with that. They hate it if they just randomly die. This is the kind of player that gets really upset if their character just fails a save and then they fall in the pit.
Or even if it's not epic, if you can make it make sense narratively so that it actually makes the game more cool story-wise, they're cool with it.
So they can be toxic in a couple of ways too, all right? They will sometimes put the narrative as more important than the fun. So they may sacrifice another player if it makes sense for the story, right? They can be disconnected, especially during combat. This is the kind of player that really they would be happy if the dice never even came out.
Let's just narrate the combat to whatever makes the most fun, storytelling game versus the dice where you had this really great attack plan and then you rolled a 2.
And they will force conflict sometimes. They're like, I need to have somebody in the party of which I bicker and fight with.
And sometimes your players don't like conflict like that.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
The casual player. So the casual player is the one that shows up. They're there, they're enjoying your game. They're not necessarily engaged or as engaged as some of these other player types. I've learned over many, many years of playing that they're actually not bad. I used to think they weren't having fun and I needed to do more to get them engaged, but really that was upsetting them because they don't like being put on the spot. And they'd rather just play a more passive role in the game. But they're still enjoying your game, they're enjoying your story, they're enjoying being part of it. They make great friends, they make great support, especially with some of these other player types that like to be more in the forefront of things.
Got any casual players here? I got a couple of them. There you go.
Hey, I admit to being a casual player in our current game. We're playing Starfinder. It is not my favorite system. I've always been a fantasy person, not the space person. But I'm playing with it. I struggle to be as engaged as some of the other people. And I think it can be okay. I think it becomes toxic when you're disconnected and you just lose interest and you're not paying attention. When, it's your turn in combat, going,
what can my character do again?
Yeah. So
they can also distract other players.
So that was Robin Law's player character types. We're going to add a few more. One comes from Matt Colville. He runs a D&D YouTube channel on running the game and other related topics. We're picking up as Mad Scientist. This is accurate, having played D&D with our children.
So the Mad Scientist sees role-playing as an opportunity to explore and do things that they can't do in real life, right? Usually they're the younger players, because they're new to this. This is a way for them to explore. They will push boundaries. They will do things that are ridiculous or silly or just sounds fun. They like to play chaotic neutral because it lets them do whatever they want to do. For them, the world, the characters, the plot, they're all just part of a game. It's just a game. So it really doesn't matter what they do as long as it amuses them. In classic D&D terms, there used to be an old list: the real men, the role player, the munchkin, the loon. The Mad Scientist is kind of a heavy loon in that sense, right? Now, this doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Younger players are learning, they can be creative, and they can come up with some neat ideas. So sometimes their experimentation is a lot of fun, but sometimes it's not. So they can also become an attention hog. They have to say something with every step, every moment in the game they have to be doing something. They can derail your story very quickly. Like, there's a dragon over there. I want to go build a boat. Why? Because I want to throw cupcakes at the dragon. I want to build a boat.
How is that connected?
And if you have some serious gamers, the Mad Scientist will make them so frustrated. It will anger them. So it can destroy a serious campaign very quickly.
I mean, to be fair, this can be all good fun. When I look back at my past in my high school years and early college, I think we all played this. And it was good fun. Good times were had.
Yeah, they were. All right, our last. Whoop.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to go into this last one. We're adding the game Gremlin. This is your truly toxic player. This is the person, he may actually be a good person in real life, like you can be friends, but you don't want to bring them to their game because their idea of fun is to actually upset and antagonize the other people at the table. They like being jerks.
They may thrive on it. They're proud of it. There are lots of names to the game Gremlin. The Wangrod, the Dipstick, the A-hole, the Troll, the Douchebag. What was that?
My assistant supervisor likes to call them douche canoodles.
Douche canoodles. I like that term.
That's a fun one. So I mean, they can be a lot like the mad scientist, but instead of just they're doing it in the name of exploration just to see what they can do, and they're not really trying to be jerks, they're actually trying to be jerks. There are some people who play like this.
Yeah. So what are some common toxic behaviors of the game, Gremlin?
Well, okay, like to add a quick healthy side, if you can actually direct their negative aggression towards going after the villain to be part of your game, you can make it work for your game system. Like if this is your best friend and you really want to play the game with them, there are things you could probably do to try and make it work. It's just going to take a lot more effort.
Let them be jerks to the NPCs and not to your other players.
Yeah, focus it at the NPCs. Yeah, don't have them treating your other players that way.
However, they do a lot of toxic behavior.
Yeah, this is the one that does, that's what my character would do. And you just want to throttle them. They use it to justify some fairly obnoxious behavior. Yeah. They will sabotage other players. I heard a story on watching YouTube, D&D YouTube stuff somewhere where back in 2nd edition, the rogue would go and steal the cleric player's holy symbol, and you could not cast spells in 2nd edition without a holy symbol. So they were functionally crippling that character, and it was making that player really upset. But it was what their character would do. They're playing the thief. No, you're being a jerk.
Yeah. All right. So with the exception of this one, all the other types can be toxic depending on whether or not their player style isn't meshing with the other players. They really can, inadvertently. The method actor can really be frustrated by the butt kicker. The butt kicker just wants to kill the guy. I don't want to negotiate. I don't care if they surrendered. I kill them, right? And that can really upset the method actor, right? So all of these can butt heads and clash with each other. Doesn't mean you have to have a party of entire method actors, although that's always interesting. I think that's that's Critical Role. You know?
I mean, to be fair, these are player types, but a lot of times and we say like he's the tactician and I'm sometimes the casual gamer, sometimes I'm the role player, sometimes I'm whatever. Sometimes it just depends on your mood that day as to how you're going to play. Like when we came back for our first game after the whole COVID thing hit in 2020 and we were meeting online, everyone was so frustrated and angry. They all became murder hobos. Our entire group was murder hobos. They really just wanted to express all that frustration and kill all the things.
They did. We put them in a dungeon full of Yetis, and there were different tribes with different personalities.
They were intelligent. They had government stuff, and no.
They slaughtered them all.
It was genocide. And you know what? We just rolled with it because we figured, you know what? You could tell from the energy and at our digital table that people were just frustrated and they needed to let that out. But it worked because everyone at the table was okay with it. It was not toxic in that sense.
All right. So now that we've looked at the different player types and the player styles, we talked about ways they can be toxic. Let's take a look at 14 recommendations for dealing with troublesome toddlers from the American Pediatric Association.
And
all of these are grounded in scientific research for small children. They have yet to be applied to adults or, young adults. And so if you are researchers wishing to explore this, go for it and show us what you find, because that would be awesome. But here they are. Number one.
I mean, to be fair, I work in emergency dispatch. Over half of my calls could be summarized as adults acting like toddlers. We get plenty of real emergencies, but there's a lot of stuff like, you're really calling me because they gave you the wrong hamburger in the drive-thru? Why did you call 911 for that?
Give your toxic player plenty of affection. Actually, this is a big one. Get to know your players. Find out what their particular play style is. Now, of course, no one's one play style all the time. Their mood may affect it. But generally people have ones they default to, ones that they prefer, all right? So our players who are normally very mixed all want to be butt kickers, let them, but rather think about what your players want. And this is great to do.
So like if you have a power gamer or someone you know is a power gamer, give them a fun artifact they could go for. Then they're going to focus on that and not messing with other people. If you have a butt kicker who likes to tend towards the murder hobo, include plenty of combat situations where they can let out that aggression and roll some dice, because rolling dice is fun.
Tactician, give them a puzzle or two.
Casual player, don't put them on the spot. If you know you have someone who's going to be a casual player and just wants to be part of the game, and when it's their turn, roll their basic attack, and that's all they want to do, great. Don't put them on a spot for role playing, or if you really want to include them, give them a warning. Go, hey, I want to put your character in this situation. I want to give you some time to think about how you want to respond to that, or help them come up with stuff before the game starts. That way they're not feeling on the spot and like they're not getting anxiety over it.
The actor, give them a chance to role play. Puts them in role-playing situations. And then for the storyteller, put in a dramatic twist. Oh, that NPC was really a villain? Oh, could have seen that coming.
Yeah, or the mad scientist, occasionally let some of their crazy ideas succeed. Don't just say no.
And then for the game gremlin, kick them out of the game.
That as a service
to the other players.
I mean, sometimes if they're really your best friend, you can try to make it work, but sometimes it's not. It's like a bad dating relationship going, let's just be friends, but we can't do this game.
All right. Toxic player tactic number 2. Prioritize the rules. Make sure your toxic player is aware of the rules and enforce them. Okay, so this is actually an easy one. Games are rules. They're made up of rules. I kind of follow Salin and Zimmerman's definition of games, where games, what defines a game from play is that games have rules. They have mechanics. They have systems. And so your rules need to be important to play the game well. You can add rules to it. That's perfectly fine. One of our rules in our games for a while was that nobody could play an evil character, just because we'd had enough of evil characters. And we're like, nope, it's just going to cause conflict in the party.
Well, yeah, it was causing inter-party conflict because there's nothing like having your evil player or character with an evil character, and then the player with the lawful good paladin. And after a while, you get tired of butting heads with them.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this has gotten old.
Yeah. Or likewise, you could ban chaotic neutral. Say, I'm sorry.
Somewhat valid.
Somewhat valid. Chaotic neutral just tends to be amoral silly.
I mean, is that really what the alignment stands for? I don't think so, but that tends to be how people play it.
Yeah.
So in this, it's like you could keep your rules, allow some debate, but in these kinds of games, as the dungeon master, you're the final arbiter. You could determine what stays and what holds. I mean, keep to the rules. That keeps it fair. That's part of being a game. But if there's a gray area or a space where it's not super clear, you get to make the final call and make sure that sticks. Yeah. Don't let it devolve into a bickering match.
Don't let your munchkin destroy the game for the others, but give your mad scientist some room to explore. All right, number 3. Toxic player tactic number 3. Set clear boundaries for your toxic player. Respect the agency of your players, but make it clear where the boundaries are. For instance, we don't allow in our games rape. Period. It's just one of our rules.
I mean, we kind of discourage those kinds of sexual encounters anyways. You set boundaries by not including brothels in every town.
Yeah.
Like, it's not available.
Yeah, they can't go.
Because I don't like that. So we just don't make it part of our games. And we've set that as a boundary.
Mm-hmm. And or things to try and encourage the players to stay together, to play together. So we tend to use things like group stealth checks, so that that way the group actually tries sneaking together as opposed to sending out the one thief every time. Because there's always the paladin going, I can't make this roll.
I mean, yeah, they put all their stuff into, strength and wisdom because they're a paladin. They have armor with armor check penalties. They're probably going to fail that roll repeatedly. So by taking the group check rule, it allows our party to keep together. And, you can work with even evil characters in a game. I like to use the example from Dragonlance. So the Dragonlance Chronicles books were pretty much a D&D game in narrative form. You have Raceland, which was an evil wizard, but he worked well with the party. Just with the understanding that at some point, if his goals diverge from the parties, they might end up at odds with each other. And just as long as everyone was aware of that and okay with that, it worked.
But you might have some kind of informal rules regarding sabotaging and backstabbing it. We kind of make it clear that you really can't do anything to another player's character without their permission.
Yeah, I mean,
Period.
if you want to do something like steal the cleric's holy symbol, but you want to work with that player, so it's this dramatic story thing, and you have this conflict, and you find a way to resolve it as part of just a way to make the game more fun, great. But if you're just doing it to sabotage the other player's fun because it makes you laugh, that's not cool.
And enforcing that.
Yeah.
Toxic player number 4, prevent tantrums. Know your toxic player's limits, explain the rules, and take no in stride. So there's a bunch of things we can say about this one. Be sure to pick your battles. You don't need to deny everything. That'll just frustrate the mad scientist and the munchkin. However, there are times where you gotta say no.
Yeah, or know when to let your story go, because as dungeon masters, a lot of times we have this cool story planned, and if your players aren't going with it, sometimes it's better to just be flexible and run with what they want to do.
Yeah. Gauge how tired they are and whether they have the patience for another battle.
So we all know that shopping with tired toddlers ends badly for everybody. If your players have had a really long week at work, I mean, we're all adults now, and you can have rough weeks and just come to the table fatigued and exhausted, and you're just not going to be at your best.
Yeah. Check in. It's a good idea to check in with your players. Are they having fun? Is something bothering them? Are they uncomfortable with something? Right? To determine where their limits are.
I mean, that could go back to that post-COVID game. You sensed the feel of the table. Everyone was tired. Everyone was frustrated. We could have pitched a fit over them, genociding this entire group of monsters, but we ran with it and everyone had fun. They released some steam and it was a good thing. Like, everyone felt psychologically better for having done that.
So, yeah, be very, very careful what you do to their characters. Know where their limits are. So the method actor won't mind if you kill their character as long as it's dramatic. But the munchkin or the power gamer is going to get mad. So an insta-kill dungeon is just going to frustrate them. Head it off, right?
Yeah, some players are going to hate the Funhouse dungeons. You don't even want to try to run them through it. That's just not going to be their idea of fun.
Yeah. All right. Number 5.
Yeah.
Enforce consequences. Don't baby them. If they fail, they fail. It's only a game. However, don't punish them.
Yeah, don't spoil your kids. Don't give them everything. That's not life.
No.
But allow natural consequences to follow through. I mean, some of this goes to knowing your limits. Your mad scientist may do some really dumb things, and then natural consequences will ruin your game.
Yeah.
We've had that happen.
Yeah. I mean, you're always free to fudge the dice to reduce frustration or allow something epic to happen. The butt kicker may have killed every enemy that you've had so far, except for the end boss, who has 1 hit point.
We could just, let them have 1 hit point until it's the storyteller's turn, and then let them get that last hit.
Let them get the last hit in.
I mean, it's the dungeon master screen. They don't see your notes. And does the butt kicker really care if they actually killed the monster? No, they just wanted to roll lots of dice and roll heavy damage. They got to do that. But your storyteller that really cared about that really dramatic final moment got that last hit on against their nemesis.
Yeah. And narrating is always fun. One thing I like to do sometimes is if my players botch, they roll a 1. I don't just say you fail. And so, I tried the little charts. Those are fun. I tend to come up with some pretty fun things as well. You swing your sword back. It strikes something wet and squishy. You don't know what it is. Next person.
Like, was it something else?
I'll come back to them.
Was it the NPC we were trying to protect? We don't know because we weren't sure exactly what was behind you.
I had fun with one player one time. This is off topic. It's kind of fun. But they botched. They rolled a 1. And I said, okay, I'm going to hold it for now. And he looked at me and he said, you can't do that.
Yeah, well, I just did.
And I went, I just did. And I moved on. And I ended up, he was fighting against a troll and he was playing a cat creature. So the troll grabbed his tail and used him as a club against the bard in the party. And he said, okay, I appreciate that. That was fun. I got to hit the bard because I knew he was at odds with the bard a little bit. inadvertently. But you also want to have some logical consequences. So actions in role-playing games have consequences. You kill that innkeeper, guess what? They're probably going to run you out of town.
Or arrest you.
Or arrest you, right? You taught that dragon, it's going to eat you. Or attack, at the very least. This is one of the hardest lessons for the mad scientists to learn, but honestly, that's why they're pushing those buttons.
They kind of want to see what happens.
They want to
if you
see
do
what
it.
happens.
In our last game, they were in a Fey area that had cursed pools. Well, if you touched the water, we would roll randomly on a chart, and your species and gender would change.
It was basically the pools from Ranma 1/2.
Sort of inspired by that, but it was like any pool, it didn't matter. We just roll randomly on the chart. We stopped throwing him in when he came out as an ent. And I think he stayed that way for the rest of the game because that was permanent.
I wish he stayed as the rabbit.
Yeah, we thought that would be fun, but I mean, mechanically, it didn't change anything other than the way they looked.
Yeah.
I think he liked it. What do you think? Yeah, thumbs up.
All right.
That was our paladin that we did that to. But that's really a mad scientist thing to do. They're going to be like, I see a pool of water. Sure, I want to see what happens when I get in it. But that could be really bad if you'd had a really negative consequence to it.
Yeah. And sometimes these consequences can have unexpected results. So in one game, we had a power gamer who designed an overly powered character. That character got taken over by a ghost, who in turn turned around and attacked the rest of the party. Now, he just used the base attacks of that character, but he was so powerful, he managed to party wipe everyone else.
Just about.
I think one or two of them ran.
I mean, and that wasn't intentionally to
That
punish
was not
that
intentional.
character.
We weren't trying to punish the player.
It was like, okay, the ghost can attack this person, this person, this person. Let's roll randomly. Okay, it's you. And they happen to fail their save for the possession attempt. And then, well, let's go with what happens there. I'm like, and he was like, oh.
This really upset the power gamer. He was like, I did not realize I'd made this too powerful.
Yeah, and because he didn't want to hurt the party.
A lot less powerful.
Yeah, he really hadn't intended to hurt the party like that. Like he didn't want to be that much stronger than them.
Yeah, but I think it helped him grow, honestly, as a player.
So in that case, it actually worked. Sometimes it just, frustrates everybody. And that was one case where it actually came out positive.
All right. Toxic player tactic number 6, the toxic DM.
Yeah, set a good example.
Set a good example. Your toxic player will mirror your behaviors. So perhaps the worst player in a game to be toxic is the person running the game. They may use the game to live out their fantasies. You get to watch while their NPCs fight each other. They might be too strict on your choices because they don't want you ruining my world. It's mine. I have
My precious.
my fanfics. I'm writing an epic novel. It'll be done someday. Right? Role-playing is about co-creation. The DM creates the world and the players act within it to decide where it goes. In order to be fun, in order to be a good game, really the game master can't be the toxic player. Okay?
Yeah.
So but if you set a good example, it can rub off on your players.
I mean, has anyone been in a situation where other people's moods rub off on you? Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty universal. That's not just kids.
No.
But so if you're stressed, upset, if you're running the game and you've had a really awful week and like your grandma just died and your cat died too and all this stuff happened, maybe it's time to just cancel the game.
Yeah, just reschedule the game.
But know yourself. Like maybe the game is actually going to be a place where you can just not think about this stressful stuff in life and you can actually relax a bit. But if you think it's going to impact the way you play and you're going to be short-tempered with your players because of it, then cancel. It would be so much better for everyone if you just reschedule because you're not going to have fun during that game.
Oh, no,
and no one else is either.
And don't enable toxic behavior. Don't show favoritism. If one player is abusing another player, don't join in.
Like if someone's teasing someone else and, don't laugh. That could be hard because sometimes what they say might be funny, but it's going to be hurtful to the other person. And sometimes being a dungeon master means being the stronger person.
Yeah. Treat your other players well. Toxic player tactic number 7. You laugh. This is good advice. Some of you are clapping now. Yes. Right.
seriously. We learned, especially once we shifted to digital stuff, because we play for long sessions because, we don't meet as often. So we always included dinner and we'd have snacks around the table. Well, when we went to digital,
We didn't do that.
we didn't do that. And we have a couple of diabetic players who actually, because we didn't schedule in a dinner break because we didn't think about it, because we
were just snacking and eating.
We assumed everyone else was just kind of snacking or ordering food out, takeout or whatever. And they didn't. And so 12 hours later, they hadn't had any food and were feeling sick. And that was also impacting their play because that's just not healthy. And it made for a bad experience for a lot of people.
Make sure your players are eating and hydrating. Hydrating, right? We keep hearing that one. And another thing is to set an ending time, sleep schedule, set an ending time. I'll admit.
When we were younger, we could play till 4 a.m. and it was okay.
Yeah, but now,
as adults, we have to get up in the morning and go to work.
And as much fun as it would be to continue playing until 4 a.m, we know it will hurt if we do so. So it's good to set an ending time and just follow through with it. I know you haven't beaten the boss. Let's stop.
We'll just finish it next time.
We'll pick it up next time. It's time.
Even if it's not the best stopping point, sometimes it's just good to recognize people's limits.
Yeah, because this is about stopping it before people get frustrated and begin acting out and getting upset.
Yeah, because even as adults, when we get really tired, that is not our best moments.
That's why people call her.
Yes.
Toxic player tactic number 8. Praise behavior you approve and ignore behavior you want to discourage.
Yeah, nothing like positive reinforcement there. That was some good role playing. Here, have an EXP bonus.
This is the great part about this. People love praise and rewards. Here, have some XP. Here, have some treasure. Right? Your player's doing something you don't really like, gloss over it. Don't give it much attention. Just move on.
Yeah, move to the next person.
Move to the next person. Okay, you do that. Next. Really? Seriously? I steal from the innkeeper. You got 2 copper. Next. That's it. You got to just move on. And quickly they'll learn, I'm not going to get attention and I'm not going to get to do what I want if I'm doing the things that the DM probably doesn't like.
And you could use that as a way to punish your players and overly direct your game, but there's times, and your game group and your situation, like your players, it's a good way to creatively redirect somebody.
Mm-hmm. Toxic player tactic number 9.
Okay, so we don't recommend corporal punishment with adults. That's assault and can get you sent to jail. That's a bad thing.
That is a bad thing on all levels. And we're not going to really comment on it with children, although I will admit that there are some children that talking to them does nothing.
Yeah.
And so
we've had 4 kids. They were all different. We had to get very creative because what worked with the first one did not work with the second and third.
Nope.
And they're like, oh, but I thought we knew everything about parenting because this worked. And then we're like, this not with this kid.
Natural consequences are one thing, but doing something specifically to thwart a player or upset a player is another. Oh, you're immune to fire? That's fine. Every enemy here uses ice. That's a fire gremlin. It's using ice. It's a red dragon. It's an ice dragon. Right? Physically attacking your player is bad unless you're LARPing, I guess.
Basically, it's tempting to want to punish your player for, especially your min-maxer.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would have been really easy to see us having intentionally had that person be taken over by the ghost or whatnot, just so they could suffer for their actions, But that's not cool either.
Yeah. Yelling for dramatic effect is fine as long as your players are okay with it and know that's what you do. But the first time you scream at them as if they're the worst person in the world, you're like, I'm in character. It's okay. Make sure they're all right with that. All right. The point is to have fun, not get pissed at one another.
Yeah.
Toxic player tactic number 10.
Redirect when you can.
Random encounters are your friends.
If you have a situation where they're not sure which direction to go, your players are starting to bicker with each other, they're all getting frustrated, there's nothing like a random encounter to completely derail that frustration.
It's like, okay, make a perception check. Yep, that's an orc.
And now they're dealing with the orc, not this other issue.
So you can always add new variables or something that players find unusual, rearranging stuff based on what your players need. If you get the feeling after a combat that they are combated out, maybe take out the next one. Just gloss over it, move on.
Or change it to something else.
If they're getting frustrated with a role-playing situation, I don't know how to persuade. My character's good at persuading. I'm not. Well, that's where skill checks are good.
Yeah.
You know?
Or where the DM can step in as a narrator. If you have someone who's not strong on role-playing, but made a character that is, let them make a bunch of skill checks on persuasion, bluffing, etc., and then you can narrate how it falls in place, and they're going to be happier with it, and your game moves forward.
That's right. Or roll on a random event table. The books come with a whole bunch of. Xanathar's, I think, has a whole bunch of great random tables in it of just weird things that can happen that can just basically redirect them. Because the goal is, this is kind of like we're seeing some toxic behavior, shifty distraction.
Yeah. I mean, people who came to our last panel may have heard this, but we had some casual players or more casual players who were in a town, and our louder players were not there that week. And they just weren't sure what to do with the stuff, and we were stagnating. They were getting bored and frustrated, so we throw a random chart. He ended up going to a taco truck, getting married, and it turned into this heist thing.
As taco trucks do.
Because that's totally normal. But it involved a random chart out of Xanathar's, and then the game picked up. The pace moved forward. Everyone had fun, and it just took adding that extra element from us instead of putting it all on them.
Mm-hmm. Toxic player tactic number 11. Wow, we're shooting through these. We're doing good.
Yeah.
Let your toxic player have some control by offering a choice between two things. It doesn't matter if it's an illusion of choice, as long as they think they have a choice. So with toddlers, the example is, do you want to wear the red jacket or the green jacket? You're wearing a jacket.
Yeah.
Right? But the same is true for adults sometimes, too. Right? So, okay, you want to play a Jedi? All right, well, the system doesn't really have Jedis, but you could play a Blade Singer Wizard or a Kensai Monk. It's in the system. They can do it, right? That's great for that specialist that wants to play a Star Wars character, right?
Yeah, tease out exactly what they like about the Jedi and find a class that kind of works for it.
Yeah. Honestly, the Storyteller appreciates this one too, really. You know? Yeah, okay, there's a left path and a right path. I'm not going to tell you they both go to the same place. But we'll make this dramatic. Right? But two options. Very good to do. Anything else you want to say on this one?
Let's see. I think this kind of also tied in with boundaries. Sometimes it's possible to offer your players too many choices, especially with a sandbox game. There's nothing like managing the table by managing what your players know. It's your game, it's your world. You control what they know about that world. If you know you have a player that's going to want to derail your game by going to some dungeon or tower you're not going to have prepared, and you know they're going to want to, if you tell them about it, then don't tell them about it.
Now, this actually gets into toxic player tactic number 12. If you don't want the toxic player getting into something, don't make it an option. You know?
Out of sight, out of mind. If they don't know it's there, they can't do anything with it.
Right. So you want to have some things your mad scientist can do, but if you give your mad scientist the world to play with, they will play with the world. Right? I mean, this might fall into railroading a little bit, which is kind of, it can be very toxic to the players.
That's a balance in D&D because, face it, as anyone who's doing dungeon mastering and making their own game, there's a limit to how much you can prepare. So you want your players to stay within that realm of what you have ready, because that's going to be more fun for everybody. If they're constantly going after stuff you don't have prepared and you're having to make it up, sometimes that works, but a lot of times that's just going to end up flopping and being frustrating.
Okay. Toxic player tactic number 13. Keep your rules simple and offer brief explanations. Okay. So social rules. All your social rules should be pretty simple. Lay them down at the beginning. You're working together as a team. No backstabbing unless you agree to it. Respect each other's characters and equipment. Don't do any, don't don't go engage in name calling, that kind of thing. It's good to know where the problems might be based on your players. So it's helpful to know your players ahead of time. And so this is actually one of the more challenging aspects of running a game.
Especially when you move into the adult world, because you end up with interpersonal conflict within your game group.
I mean, we had, and this is a challenging situation, we had one player who had a crush on another player.
And she was dating another player.
She was dating a different guy.
Yeah, all playing in her group.
All playing together. And so he started treating her in the game like a slut or a whore or a jerk.
I mean, he was being aggressive, passive aggressive towards her, and it was a really bad situation.
Pleasant. We had to pull him aside and have a talk with him about this, and we put them in different games because we were running 2 games at the time.
Yeah,
we had to separate them.
We had a group that was large enough that we just ran 2 simultaneous games with all of us kind of playing in the same space, but we were playing 2 different games. So we separated people into different groups too. That works for toddlers too. Sometimes you just need to separate people.
Sometimes you do. You go to that corner. You go to that corner. Last one. Toxic player tactic number 14. Stay calm. Your toxic player, actually this is all players, will feed off your stress.
I mean, this kind of ties into being a good example, but if you are stressed and upset, they will feed off of that. That's something I pick up a lot in my field of work. If I answer the phone and I get stressed out by the person's stress on the other end of the line, then they're going to get more stressed. And then our poor responders are going to get there and find a real mess.
Yeah.
But if I can stay calm, that will rub off on them, and then the situation can defuse a lot of times before our help even gets there.
So have some mechanisms for yourself to help you when you feel your attention getting...
Yeah, D&D yoga.
Yep. Yeah, D&D yoga.
Do some breathing exercises.
Do some breathing exercises. I said D&D yoga as a joke, but it's actually a thing. That really surprised me.
There's some YouTube videos on it. I think there's a panel on it at MAGFest. If you look on the schedule, I saw D&D or yoga for gamers. So maybe it's a thing.
Whatever you do, whatever helps you get you in your Zen moment, whatever helps you stay calm, because that will be critical.
Because if you're calm, your players will feed off of that. If you are stressed, your players will feed off of that, because agitation tends to breed.
Yeah. And at the very worst, there is such a thing as dungeon master fatigue, just like there is in being a parent sometimes. So
yeah.
What you might want to do is pass it off to someone else.
Yeah, see if someone else in your group might be willing to play a couple of one-shots just to give you a break.
So for parents, that's what grandparents are for. Take them. Please, give me 10 minutes. I need to go cry in a corner. No.
No, there are days like that.
There are days like that. But there's still good days, too. There are still good days, too.
No, but that's life.
Right.
Things won't always be like this perfect, happy... rainbows and butterflies
Recommend
situation.
Another player takeover as a game master. Matt Colville has a great YouTube series on how people who are interested in role playing and becoming game masters and are interested in trying.
His running the game series. So if you have someone who's like, well, I'm just not sure I could do that, send them that way. Tell them, hey, go watch this. You can pretty sure you can do this, to help ideas for working with it. So
those are the 14 tactics we found. And I don't know. We thought it was funny at first, but now the more we looked at it, we're like, wow, this sounds like logical ways to help diffuse the situation. So that's all we have for right now. We'll give you an opportunity to clap for us here before
or
we do
ask questions.
Thank you. But at this point, we do have a few minutes left. We'll open the floor for some questions and answers. I saw your hand shoot up first. You got a question?
Are you familiar with the webcomic Darths and Droids?
Garths and Droids?
Darth, like Darth Vader.
Oh, Darths and Droids. No.
So it's Star Wars reimagined as a D&D style game.
Mm-hmm.
I think you might be interested in it because one of the things, it shows, I'd say, a healthy relationship between the GM and the players. There is conflict in many cases.
Good.
Okay.
These kinds of tactics depict here.
Really? Awesome. Yes.
There's a character or a player type that kind of fits some of your scripts there. When you're in your GM, still learning how to DM, and you're playing with a bunch of way more experienced players, how do you handle the rules in yours?
Well, see, and this is an experience we've had. I've been role playing for a number of years, so I know the rules, but I don't always remember which rules I'm working with. Because, I mean, is this the one where you use will saves? You know? So it's okay not to be an expert in the rules and still run the game, to be flexible with it. If you're with a bunch of players who know the rules pretty well, use an opportunity for them to guide you on areas that you don't know very much about.
Okay, so let me add to this. So I am not a very experienced DM. I play more than I run the game. So when we ran a really long campaign that we just finished that we co-DM'd, but something I would do is I made up a lot of the rules. I'm like, I don't know.
They're more guidelines than actual
So yeah, I
rules.
followed that. But if there was a specific rule and one of the players knew it, I would ask them to, hey, could you read that, find that in the book and tell me what that section says so we keep it fair? Or just create monsters that they'd never heard of before that followed my mechanics. And so it was my thing.
The strategy that I've been trying to use is, because I used Breaking Emergent to try and dig through 3 books to figure out what the actual rule is
Yeah.
in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
So what I've been trying to do is, this is what we'll go with for this session, and at the end of the session, we'll figure out the actual rule.
That's
That's a-
actually very good advice.
Good rule of thumb to go by.
That works very well
And
too.
just stick with it. Put the book away. Deal with it later.
I mean, we have enough players we can.
Saw a question over here.
Online settings, what do you do if someone is focused on the numbers and they refuse to like look at anything else but the numbers and they have to like see the role in an online setting and it's visibly frustrating them and you can't like put it correctly in else because they have to see that number.
They have to see the number. You know, we actually had a player who got manipulated. They got controlled, mind controlled by an NPC. They spent an hour with that NPC, and we just didn't bother doing the roll. We're like, dude, you spent an hour with this vampire. I'm sorry, they got you.
I mean, it was like a vampire, but the charm worked based off of voice. So if you could hear her, every round, like every 6 seconds in game, you would have to be making a save, and they're 15 levels higher than you.
And they got mad because they wanted to roll. And so that's kind of getting into your question. They're obsessed with the dice. And so in an online setting, that's kind of hard, especially 'cause you're like, listen, I'm sorry, but this is just how we're going to have to play. Because of the online limitations of online, everything can't be visible to you. So, you know, if it's something that's going to be a game breaker for you, then let's meet in person sometime. Otherwise, maybe suggest that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. What?
Yeah, I don't know. If it's you're the DM and it's your rule that your roles are not visible, then that's just how the game is.
Yep. Stick with it. Don't argue it with them. Like, nope, we're done. Like the toddler. Yeah, question.
Just to add on to that, if they really insist to see numbers, you could just fudge them like you said. Yeah, I rolled a nat 20 and then I got a plus 15. I'm like, okay, well, you have to roll a 50 or higher, so.
Oh, so they're hiding the numbers? Or are
No,
they?
I mean, if you're the DM, you can just say,
Yeah.
okay, well, yeah, the numbers are such that you
Yeah.
would never have gotten.
Yeah, if the player's hiding the numbers, that's kind of scary. But the DM should certainly be able to hide the numbers, especially because it's like, no.
I mean, generally, I don't like fudging rolls, especially because a lot of times it's really obvious and then you don't feel like you achieved anything when you do win.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating, but at the same time, if your characters work themselves into a really bad situation, I like the option. Because there's situations where I'm like, okay, we've had some bad rolls here and it would really stink to party wipe right here. That's going to just not be fun for anybody.
Yeah, so we'll do it sometimes, but not all the time. You know, and we don't tell our players when we do it. The less they know, the better. All right, any other questions? Back there?
You seem really deft at gauging the tension of the table and when to step in and start to enforce the boundaries. Are there any anecdotes or specific ways you could give examples on a new GM trying to feel that out? You
Yeah.
talk to the person directly, in group or privately?
That's a hard one because some of it's just experience. I played my first D&D game in 1991, so I've been playing for 30 years.
It does come easier with time.
I've been a parent for 20 years, so I've had to learn to interact with small people and try to get them to be decent adults, with only questionable success sometimes.
And sometimes you won't know. Sometimes you won't find out until later that they were upset, because some people
Yeah.
are very good at hiding it.
So we've talked about the good stuff, like the stuff we've learned. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we've had a lot of really just bad situations that didn't necessarily end well, and we tried to learn from those mistakes.
But techniques that you can look at, are they engaged? Are they looking at you? Are they looking at their phone the whole time? Looking at their facial expressions. Has it gone from a smile to a, wow, I like that. Yeah, exactly. Right? Does their facial expression show that do they have the frowns, the little lines on their face? Are they rolling a little hard on the table? Are they acting a little bit aggressive in certain ways? So you got to pick up on those kind of nonverbals. Are a great way to pick up if there's a tension.
That goes back to our first one, showing your players affection. Know your players. Take the time to be friends with them, to get to know their tics and how they interact with things. If you know the person better, you will be able to pick up on those situations better.
Yeah. If they're turning down drinks, if they're facing away from people, and they may not want drinks, but but all signs that could point you to something going on behind the scenes. And sometimes you just have to ask them, is everything okay?
Yeah. And then, sometimes it's not you in the game. Sometimes it's just them in real life. Like, we notice everybody can be a toxic player depending on the situation. Sometimes people are going through some really bad stuff and you may not know about it. Yeah. So communication, that's his field of study. It helps a lot of things when you're willing to communicate with people.
Yep. So
Have that good communication feedback loop, active listening. It's all good things.
Sometimes the fun parts of the game are actually in between the game itself. Just spending time with your friends. Yeah?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Any other questions? I think we're out of time for today, actually. But thank you all for coming. If you want to check out some of our other panels, we're doing one tomorrow on how to do a dramatic podcast. And then Sunday, we're doing one on where have all the heroes gone? A discussion of ethics.
In role-playing.
Which I'm sure on Sunday afternoon, everybody's going to be in the mood to discuss the philosophy of ethics. But we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Thank you all.